Nerds International proudly presents
Alfheim, the fourth realm of Earth, a world of fantasy adventure awaiting your imagination.
Warp Shell, a universe in ruin. Countless heroic tales waiting to be weaved through space and time.
Ghost Mountain, a place caught between heaven and hell, filled with fireside tales of the Wild West. These are the worlds of Index Card RPG, and this is a podcast about those worlds.
Welcome to Threats, Treats, and Timers Podcast, Episode 2. I am one of your hosts, Gary, a.k.a. the Murder Hobo, and I'm here, as always, with none other than Victor Diaz, the man, the myth, the legend.
Y'all ready for this?
And we got Frank the Tank, who likes a good spank. I wrote these a couple weeks ago. What are we chatting about tonight, guys? What do you got, Victor? What are we doing?
Tonight we try to take over the world, Pinky. Oh, wait. Sorry, wrong show. Anyways, I'm your host, Victor, a.k.a. Ezra Harden. You guys know who I am and what's going on. Gary, next time you write the show notes, quit drinking so much. That was a little too rhymey for me. And you guys know what we're doing. You guys are going to be talking about index card role-playing games.
And who's this other charming bearded fellow?
And I'm Frank. I'm Frank with everyone.
Yeah. Are you?
We're going to have to come up with a name for him. I don't know about Frank the Tank, but we're going to have to come up with a radio host name for him.
Yeah, we don't want any copyright infringement.
We definitely don't want that.
Well, we've got a lot to talk about tonight, guys, so let's start it off with what have we been doing this week?
Yeah, what have you been doing, Frank? And Victor?
Oh, man, I've had a pretty busy week this week. You know, in case anybody hasn't noticed, there's a new ICRPG character record sheet out on the market. One of my favorite things to do is put together these old school looking sheets. And really what happened was I was sitting down with my daughter to put together a character. And I said, you know what, this just doesn't feel intuitive to me. And I need to make up a character sheet. So that's what I did. And we put it out there. It's out there on Drive-Thru and RPG Now. It's pay what you want. There's a link on the Google Plus page. So
that's a half sheet character sheet too, is it not?
It is, and that was my biggest thing. Was I didn't the quarter sheet I thought was a little bit. It was nice, but it was a little too small. And the whole sheet, I've got a small table, so I don't really like having whole sheets of paper. And I just didn't feel like you needed to have that much real estate for this game.
Quarter sheet or half sheet, either way, Frank, you knocked it out of the park, man. As soon as I looked at that sheet, I was like, hey, this is like old school D&D. Like literally, like it's the ICRPG version of the old school D&D.
It's got a great flavor to it. Now, is there a front and a back side or just a front side?
I just put a front side. You know, I could have put a back side, but just turn it over and write notes. You know, I don't know. I like simple.
That's why you hang out here, right? Because you like simple.
Yeah, that's why I like you, Gary.
Oh, you're the best. I feel like we need the man hug right now. We need some man cuddles going on. What about you, Victor? I'm sure you sat around in your sickness all week and did not much.
Oh, wow. All right, folks. Well, like last week, we're like a week behind to where we should be recording these. We should be 3 or 4 episodes in, but unfortunately, yours truly has not been feeling that great this last few days. So I've been doing the best I can to keep from killing somebody at work and making it home in enough time to get some rest. As you can probably tell from my voice, I haven't been feeling very well the last couple of days, but we're getting there. That's what we're doing here today. As for what I've been doing all week, where do I start? There's like a half a dozen supplements that I've added to Index Card Role-Playing Game. I posted them on the Google Plus page. Frank and I have been talking about a world primer. We've been going over a bunch of notes and just a bunch of ideas that I've had over the last year. Finally compiled all those notes, put them out there for everybody to go over. Everything from a world primer to supplements to magic to the Book of Yogg. I've been working on the Torton Book of War. Ezra Harden's playbook is out there. I mean, it just runs the gambit. So take a look at the Google Plus page. Trust me, there's enough out there for everybody.
I muted myself, stupids.
Don't hit that button.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's been a productive week for you. You've tossed up a ton of material. The Book of Torten, is that the spell one?
Okay, so the one you're talking about is called the Book of Yogg, and the Book of Yogg in ICRPG, Yogg is one of the one of the gods of magic. At least that's what some of the stuff that I've read from the background. So, hankering, if I got that wrong, let me know. But as far what I decided to do was take the entire D&D 5th edition SRD and convert all of the spells into ICRPG spells. Poof, there it is. I just put it out there for everybody. So that's the Book of Yogg.
So the Torton Book of War is the one with the like knocking them prone and stuff like that. One of them I was looking at really made me giggle. You can roll hard and add a maneuver to, like, say you wanted to try and knock somebody down. You roll hard, and it was that one. Is that the Torton Book of War? I think it was.
Actually, that's a different. What I did was I had taken some notes. And a lot of the notes that I had taken either in game or during games I have played as Ezra Harden, the Psyker Fragment, or other games that I've played here at home or with other people in ICRPG, and also some of the notes that I've taken off of the Google Plus page from other people that recommended, I threw those all into one compilation. That compilation is called Ezra Harden's Playbook. And I've numbered them all, and I've given them blue bananas depending on how hard they are. The more bananas it gets. It's kind of a running joke on there. But one of those things I did is I took some of the stunts from, I think it was Fantasy Age, the combat stunts chart. I had taken some of those and converted them over on how to use them into ICRPG. And so what I've done is I've taken those out of the Ezra Harden's Playbook now, and I've put them into the Torton Book of War. I'm going to use those as combat stunts or role-playing stunts. And yeah, some of that stuff is actually really creative because it helps a lot of the GMs and a lot of the players think a little more creatively on what they can do during a game. Because one of the things that I noticed, even with people who were somewhat experienced with role-playing games, ICRPG can be such an open-ended rules-like system that it doesn't give them a box to play in anymore. So now that they have they can go wild and run around naked, quote unquote. They don't know what to do. It's almost like as if they get that indecision lockup. And so I thought if I gave them half a dozen items of things that they can do, such as push someone, trip someone, disarm someone, distract someone, support someone, that kind of stuff. Especially for younger players, even though they played role-playing games a lot, because D&D gives you a lot of options when you're doing that for your feats and for combat actions and whatnot. But I thought it would be really cool to have one for ICRPG, just to be able to throw out there to give people examples of what are some of the roles and some of the situations you can do it.
I think I found it. No, these are just tags. There's so much good stuff that you know what I mean? I'm looking at the resource page right now for the whatchamacallit. Did you guys check out the Card Forge thing that somebody threw up there? Delicanon RX? Yeah, that
was beautiful.
I'm so stoked for that. That is so awesome. He's the one, I think, who put together the 100-item deck for loot. The 100-item loot deck. It's a card deck, and it's 100 different items of loot that you can use, and you can give your players as physical cards. You can print them out and give them to each other. But he put together like a database online that you can go in and punch your own stats and your own descriptions into the database, and it'll punch out a sheet that lets you print out that card so you can use it, whether it's magic items or loot or powers, whatever it may be. He's got a bunch of icons and a really nice background or whatever. But we were just talking about that, I think it was yesterday, day before, about what if Hankrin would draw the backgrounds, one for Alfheim, one for Ghost Mountain, one for Warp Shell, and so on and so forth. So we can have different backgrounds and have different cards that are specific to each world primer. So I think that would be really cool. But that was an awesome thing.
He's got a nice area where you can import artwork as well. I think it'd be interesting, or I think it'd be cool if he had, artwork that you could select. So he's already got some iconic stuff on there, like a sword for different things. If you had some generic artwork that matched what the stuff that he already has, then you could pick for your card. I think that would be good too.
Yeah, it is beta version 0.1. So hopefully over the next little while, there'll be more material added to it. But I just thought that was the wickedest thing ever, Cardforge, because I can take those things and I can pump off a card, cut it out inside of GIMP or whatever, and then import that card into Tabletop Simulator and just immediately add it to my decks and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. Another little thing that's on here too is Renegade 16. He's finally put out his In a Galaxy Far, Far Away, his conversion or his Star Wars Worlds Hack book that he's posted up there. There's a bunch of stuff in there. I ribbed him some time ago about the Stormtroopers, and they should all have -2 to their shoot. So yeah, it's funny how much stuff gets posted up here and all the good stuff that people are dropping on here. Like it's just almost unlimited.
Hard to keep track of.
Yeah, it's just flying fast and furious because it is sort of such an easy system to sit down and play with. There's a Priest Powers guide in here too that somebody threw up. A quick reference sheet, David Sherduin, I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name, but he's got like a little reference sheet for index card that he's thrown up there. Your tags, a couple of videos that I created. Frank, it says here in the show notes that you're working on some kind of how-to videos for the Middle Kingdom's YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah. It's not directly related, ICRPG, but I've been trying to get these going off the ground, just sort of how to put together some of this 2.5D stuff that I'm working on. It's print and paste, as well as some other ideas that I have working with, printable textures and throwing them together on different types of terrain and just having fun with it. I again, simple for me works. So if I can reduce the amount of time it takes me to go from my craft table to my game table, I want to spread that to everybody else.
Now, will you be shirtless in these videos?
I can be. You'll never see me, but you can imagine that I'm shirtless. Would it help?
Is there an extra pay for premium members?
Absolutely. I just added a new level to my Patreon, like as we speak, and it's called the Gary level.
Nice.
Don't encourage him.
What? Simmer down, Victor.
I really don't think anybody wants to see that. So, I could probably just Photoshop my head on Schwarzenegger's body, and that might work.
I've done the same with, I don't know, you guys might remember the old Burt Reynolds where he's laying naked in front of the bear rug up against the fireplace. I Photoshopped my face on top of that and sent it to my buddy's girlfriend, wishing her like a happy 40th. Oh, wow.
That's awesome. You have way too much on your hands, Gary.
Sometimes I have a lot of time on my hands, but this last couple of weeks we've been really busy at work. A couple of guys are down, and we're short-staffed, and it's been hectic. I didn't really get a chance to do too much last week. I did finish up the 3D Flight of the Red Sword maps, and I got that posted for Tabletop Simulator. And then I spent some time, I think last week, maybe on Sunday, going through all of the One World maps, all of the 3D maps that are available inside of One World. And I just kind of did a quick video where it was just map after map after map, trying to show people the different sort of available, what's available inside a Tabletop Simulator. Because it doesn't always have to be like full on 3D.
Those Red Sword maps were phenomenal, Gary. That is very much 2.5D in virtual space.
Yeah, it's neat. Yeah. And, with the sound and the lighting and stuff like that. The funny part is I've seen Red Sword played, and so I can't really use the same material for it. Now I have to come up with sort of another set of or another adventure to play inside that. And that's sort of what it's been on my brain the last little while. Between that and a few other things that I'm planning on trying to get together. I just love farting around inside that program.
Well, you can always use that map as a warp shell ship.
Yeah,
just moves
right.
a couple things around, put some different assets in there. That's the first thing that I thought of, because I like how you use the Death Star, as the warp shell. That was really cool use of existing models in TTS for your games. But I was thinking to myself, like, man, if you change the colors and move the room around a little bit, maybe put some other types of assets in there, different control panels or chairs or whatever, you could turn that into your own warp shell ship and have adventures in it, or use it as a part of a whole nother game. So there's plenty of reuse of that, Gary. I wouldn't worry about having to change too much other stuff around. But awesome job, though. I mean, that's just. Yeah. I was just waiting for someone to do that just so I could go steal it all and go play Tabletop Simulator with ICRPG.
I spent probably the better part of 6 hours today looking at another guy who has One World built into his tabletop, and he had 900 and some odd different maps that I went through. Now they're not all 3D, and they're not all fit to the table, and they're not all really that good. There's a lot of duplicates. But I managed to find maybe about 10 others that were really good that I could use, like forest. You walk your typical forest ambush, for example.
Yeah.
There was a couple of mines and stuff like that. And I posted it in the links before the show. There we were talking about. I found this guy called Blue Sword Games. It's at CAEORA on Twitter, and most of his stuff is free, and you can find it there. And some of the stuff this guy puts out is just phenomenal. Like, there's some really sweet maps. He's got this like set of fairy maps that I wanted to mention. I'll show you guys after the show or whatever. But these maps inside of this D&D guy's one world were used as fairy worlds, but I could totally see these being used as planetary maps inside of inside of Warp Shell. This guy has got a bunch of these really unique. They were used, like I say, as fae or fairy maps, but they really have this Avatar feeling to them, the way the color pops and stuff in them. So I'm kind of excited to sort of do something about that in my Warp Shell, land on a planet and sort of go through like this Avatar type world. And I'll be putting links into the show notes for this guy too. He's got a Patreon, and I just found him today, and most of it's free. Like, I mean, you can find his maps online. He might have 10 maps you have to pay for, and 50 that he's given away for free that are just phenomenal. Even the first one that he just posted here is Turtle Island. And the one side of the map, it looks like like an island. And then the second map, you can see that it's raised up out of the water, and it's on a turtle shell's back, which is really cool. Yeah, anyways.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's a lot of free stuff, man. A lot of tokens, a lot of stuff for VTTs, and a lot of really good, cool-looking maps. He's even got free tokens for VTTs and stuff like that. I'll put links to the show notes to this guy. I just found him today, which, going through this other guy's deal. So that's it. That's it in a nutshell. It's been a busy week for everybody between this and work. And let's get into the, I don't even know what we're going to call this section, man, but I do like the meat and potatoes, except that just makes me think of your guys' junk, and that's weird.
Why is it weird all of a sudden?
Yeah, like it's anything new, right?
I guess it's just weird that I said it out loud on the podcast. I thought you were always
thinking about our junk.
You should have never started, Frank. You'll never get him off of it now.
All right, my two shirtless wonders. Let's take this over to the main topic. Today we're going to be talking about converting other settings to ICRPG.
Okay, everybody, this one's dedicated to the old country, where you used to sip on bourbon all day, slay goblins, and get some sweet loot. It's called Walking Through Alfheim. Come on. Walking through Alfheim, getting to know a wilder kind, looking for a purpose in a tavern side. I would meet you anywhere, cold and the gar meets the air, Tirolo Stanos, never looking behind. Yeah! Woo! Alfheim, everybody! Woo! Shit! Where's the whiskey?
All right, we're going to be talking about converting other systems like Dark Sun, Fallout, Star Wars, all that kind of stuff to ICRPG. So, what do you think about this, Victor? You've done some conversions. You've converted multiple things from part A to part B, and now we're converting to ICRPG. See what I did there?
Yeah, I like how you did that. That's pretty good, Gary.
Thanks, pal.
I think some is an overstatement, though.
Yeah, really. I think that's one of the biggest topics. I know Frank and I have had this discussion with Savage Worlds and a few other systems. When I first met Frank, one of the discussions we were having is, like, how do you, what other games are out there? What are we playing? I've played old school D&D, and, how do I get other people to understand it? And then, he became a big fan of Savage Worlds, which is awesome. And then Savage Rifts, of course, everybody knows me as a Savage Rifter on the other podcast. So converting stuff over is kind of something I've always done with a lot of games. But what Frank and I started the discussion with was, what's the difference between converting and translating it? So when you convert something over, you're literally taking, your strength 12 in D&D is your might 37 in this other game, and your +1 longsword in D&D is a Zeinhander, +13 in this other game system. So you're literally taking conversions of the same statistics, and either mathematically or there is a systemic equation that you're following in order to be able to convert those over. So in one game, I use Dungeons and Dragons because everyone knows how to play it, or at least it's the most common thread that everyone can follow. But if it's a +1 magic sword in Dungeons and Dragons, when you translate it over to whatever other system you're playing, like in Savage Worlds, for example, you want it to have the same equivalent in terms of damage, consistency, average rolls, the same magical power, the same abilities and flexibilities that a +1 magical longsword in D&D will have. You want it to have that same statistical weight that it has in Savage Worlds, in this example from D&D Savage Worlds. So that's a conversion. You're literally taking the positive and the negatives over there and moving them over to whatever a positive and negatives are in this system. It's easier said than done. I think conversion has its place, but I don't think you need to convert everything. And to be honest with you, some things you just can't convert. You just can't do it. There was a key example that we talked about this week, Frank and I. We have these random discussions at work that we just pop in over a chat, and we're talking about it, where I was trying to convert Shadowrun magic into ICRPG. Now, that's a big leap, because you're going from one system that uses a D6 dice pool to another system that is pretty much a D20 spin-off, or something thereof, like a D20 light system, which is what ICRPG is. I was trying to do the conversion. And of course, that time-honored, question comes up out of Frank's mouth. Well, are you converting it or are you translating it? And I hadn't stopped long enough to think about it. I was converting it. I was doing all the hard work, and I was driving myself nuts over the last week and a half trying to figure out how to do that. And then I thought about it more, and I'm like, can I translate it? So we had gone back and forth on what is Shadowrun, what are the main differences of the spells, and what are main differences in the power and the statistics, and can you convert that over? Maybe I should just translate it. Well, if I wanted to translate it, it would be so much easier, because then I would just use the existing system, the existing magic system, or the existing spells that are already in ICRPG, and just flavor them, add a little seasoning to a bolt spell a magical missile spell in ICRPG, and just call it Mana Bolt, and now all of a sudden it's the same stats. You're still rolling to hit, but now it's a Mana Bolt in Shadowrun, and that's the difference between conversion and translating.
I had a bit of a chuckle because at some point it's you made a comment and it sounded like you're trying to bring the complexity of Shadowrun over to the simplicity of ICRPG, and I'm kind of going, but Victor, that's what you're trying to get away from. and that was what really prompted me to say, tell me in a narrative fashion what happens when somebody casts this spell, because I think, whether you're talking conversion or you're talking translation, the key is always, what do you want the experience at the table to be?
I totally agree. You need to be able to see it from the player's point of view, right? What do you want them to be able to do? How do you want them to be able to feel or taste or hear or smell, whatever it is that you're trying to convey across? In this case, it was a magic spell. How do we get that same feel in the ICRPG table that you would have playing on the Shadowrun table? Then now you're talking translation. And I think in this case, that was probably the best answer or the best solution to be able to get it to work.
Yeah, and I think we came up with a really elegant solution, and in the process added some more ideas to an idea that we can incorporate into any part of your ICRPG game, not just a Shadowrun style game.
Yeah, one of the ideas that we came up with, what it does is it not only created a separate short mechanic or a rule for us to be able to use, and we called it the pushing it rule. And it was birthed from being able to cross that over from D&D, or from Shadowrun into a D20 system. And it was the feel of being able to push magic as a low-level magic user, or as a mage in Shadowrun, being able to push magic further using your own health and, taking a risk that, yes, I need to blow this entire building up with a fireball. And in Shadowrun, you could do it, but you take the risk of burning yourself out figuratively and literally, in terms of magic, using up all your health and killing yourself, trying to get this spell to go off in a super huge way, something that no first level mage would ever possibly think to do or be capable of doing in D&D. And that's where it varies, right? That's where in Shadowrun you can do that, where in D&D you can't. So a translation was the better solution there. But what we came up with was, it was called the pushing it rule. And the rule allowed you to add an additional effort to any roll that you did. So, for example, if you want to be able to make the fireball bigger, do more damage, more volume, shoot farther, whatever extra effort you wanted to put into it, the pushing it rule says you just roll a 1d4 and add it to the effort that you're trying to attempt. But when you do that, it makes it a hard roll. So if you fail, if you succeed, you add, a certain number of points to effort depending on what you roll. But if you fail, you take that much damage and hit point damage. So what you're doing with the pushing it rule is you're allowing the player to push the gap and apply just a little bit more effort, not too much, a 1d4 points worth of effort onto the die roll that you have. And we use that to replace, in Shadowrun, there's a mechanic called drain. Spell drain. Whenever you push yourself too hard, it fatigues you, and if you push yourself enough, it'll cause physical damage to you. So you can literally kill yourself casting magic that's too powerful for you to be able to do. So there's a little bit variation of the same rule in Shadowrun. But after Frank and I talked about it for a couple of days, we finally realized, hey, let's boil this down until it gives you the same feel. And I felt it was just enough just enough of an option for the players to add that 1d4 onto their die rolls, that I think it gives them that, I'm going to take a risk here. I might kill myself or I might hurt myself, but I'm going to take that risk because I need those extra little points of effort to be able to do a little bit more damage, and so on and so forth. And I think it was really great, and I appreciate the feedback, Frank, because I was really struggling with that, and I was doing it totally wrong. I was converting it, not translating it.
Well, it was just another typical day in the Armchair Designers Club.
Yeah. You and I have been sitting in those chairs for way too long because we've had very long conversations about very similar stuff.
It's funny because, converting has never been something that I've been good at. There's a lot of things that I'd like to convert. I just remember when I went from playing 5th edition to Savage Worlds, I couldn't get over the charisma. Richard Woolcock, he's got a whole conversion thing where you got to punch in these numbers and stuff, and then I was getting all this weird stuff coming up, and it's like I spent and so anyways, I gave up on it, and I just started playing Savage Worlds, just things. I went to a Western setting, pulled myself away from fantasy completely. So my question kind of is, Frank, why convert? Why bother? Why put in the effort? Why go through the trouble? Why not just hop into this system and play Alfheim as its own complete thing, or play Warp Shell like its own complete thing? Why do you always got to bring other stuff into the, it's like you're cluttering this thing up. Are you like a game hoarder?
Well, I personally, I read new games and new game systems, new worlds, whatever settings. Like most people read fantasy literature in our circles, and you're always coming across something that you like, and you say, oh, I want to play this. But maybe you can't get your group to switch over to that particular system. They're happy with playing the system that you're using. Or in our case, we have a group that's kind of stuck in, we like this system, and okay, great. Well, why don't we play the same game that we're playing now, but we're just going to switch the system. So you still have the same flavor, but we're going to try out this new system. And I think in the case of a game like ICRPG, you're talking about a simplified game system that allows you to run a lot faster and a lot. You could probably have a lot more happen in a game night than you would normally. And if that's what you're really after, you're going to look at another setting that you want to convert, that you want to use. Because, great, if I want to play fantasy, well, that's built in. If I want to play a sort of Weird West, that's built in. If I want to, there's a couple of things that we've already got represented, but then there are things that are not represented. For instance, Gary, there is not a pirates setting yet.
I would say what?
I know.
Say what?
I know.
You need to get that with me.
And Victor and I are going to try and fix that. But
I'm excited.
And that's not necessarily going to be a conversion. But you do have other things. Victor, I know, has been talking about Dark Sun. He loves Dark Sun. In fact, it's interesting because Victor and I met because we were I was in a discussion talking about Savage Worlds Eberron, and people have said before that, well, that Eberron works better in a game like Savage Worlds because it's a more pulpy setting. Well, that idea aside, people have been converting or translating games probably since the very first, 1973 version of D&D. So I think there's a lot of people out there that want to play something that isn't necessarily the exact flavor that's already available. So what are they going to do? They're going to say, I want to play Star Wars, but you know what? I'm not really interested in that system that starts with a G. I'm not going to bring that up for you, Gary, because I know that's a soft sore spot for you.
What you talking about, Willis?
I don't want to be reading chicken bones to play a game. I just want to sit down and roll 20s and know exactly what's going on. So so I'm going to convert or translate. I think for me, I think it's always about translating. It's always about taking the game feel and the game setting and then working in what already exists and then sort of looking at other options, because I think ICRPG is incredibly modular. You can plug stuff in, you can pull stuff out, and it's really not going to break the game because of how simple it is. And all you're really doing is saying, well, I want to add this flavor. It's sort of like having a spice rack, and you say, oh, yeah, I think I want to have Thai tonight, so I'm going to grab these spices and I'm going to add it in. Or next week, it's just plain meatloaf. All right, we've already got that built in. We don't have to make any changes at all.
Yeah, I completely agree. I totally agree with that simile. I mean, ICRPG's the kitchen. You look at all the different recipes that you have, and there's your world primers, and all the different spices and flavors that make up those recipes are what you're playing with as a designer whenever you're doing the translating, whenever you're doing the conversions, or whenever you're just writing up your own game that you want to play because you have a crazy idea off a comic book. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that everybody lives for. Those of us who, have been attending Gamers Anonymous, conferences for years now, we sit around and reread game systems all day long. But really what we're reading is, that Betty Crocker book of recipes that is from, 1955. And we've been changing those recipes for years. Yeah, since, ever since role-playing games was first on Earth. As far as I can remember, high school, elementary school, once I had figured it out what the game was and what it was about, I'm like, well, how can I get, my X-Men to be in my D&D world? And next thing you know, Marvel Superheroes, RPG came out a decade later, but people have been trying to play that for years. Look at Mutants and Masterminds. That's been around. That's in 3rd edition already, and that's been around for decades. And it's a great system, and it's just whatever flavor that makes you happy or whatever system that you learned in the beginning, that's what you're going to want to go to because that's what you become an expert at. And then there's other people like Gary that don't want to convert everything over. They want someone to hand him a finished product that he can just take off and run with. So it just depends on, who your audience is and who is a game designer or as a writer, even as a GM, right? What do you want to get across at the table? How do you want to get that across? Do the players need a player's guide? Let's start doing some translating. Do they need any more than that? Or is it getting really complex, or is it a really detailed game? Maybe you do need to do some conversion. Really, it doesn't matter. Whatever makes you happy and whatever system you want to play in. But it's going to be like that from now to the end of time. And a lot of it's going to be converted over from the D20 system, of course, because that's what a lot of people know. That's what millions of gamers have played for the last 30 odd years. But it's really unique. This is one of the few games that, tabletop, because you can't even do that with board games. You can't take certain board games and convert them over that just doesn't, or translate them into a different system. They don't do that. I don't know any board gamer who takes the system from one game and plays Risk with it. It just doesn't happen. But in role-playing games, I mean, there are thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. Look at the Google Plus community. Half the stuff that's posted there is, hey, I have an idea, and I'm using this system to express that idea. And I think that is one of the absolute cores of role-playing games role-playing game communities, is being able to express your own ideas with whatever system makes you happy.
Yeah, I would say why convert for me would be when I went from D&D to Savage Worlds, it was because I was like, this system is so much easier. I don't need to learn all this stuff. And it seems to me like when you go that route, immersion is a word that's been being thrown around the community in the last little while, and I think anything that you can do to reduce the amount of in between time will help keep players more immersed. Even though I think immersion's kind of like just sort of like just a weird thing, but that's what I like about this game is that there's so little to it, and it's so simple that you're so busy going around the table, nobody has time to pick up their cell phone and do their deal. But I why convert? Here, the next thing I guess would be Fallout. I love Fallout. That world is fantastic. I played, I don't know how many hours of Fallout I played. I would love to go on a few Fallout adventures and have some of that stuff converted in to ICRPG. Actually, never mind. Now let's start with the pirates, because that's ICR Pirates G. Yeah, see what I did there?
R.
Oh yeah, R.
Let's throw this over to Frank. Main steps to converting. Where do you start? What's the first thing you do?
Well, I think that you really got to sit down and, like I asked Victor after he sort of sent me 3 pages of this is what it should do, and here's all the numbers and the different factors involved and the pluses and the minuses, and I think you got to take all of the mechanics out. You've got to sit down and just ask yourself, what does this do from a story point of view? Narratively, what does it look like? And then the next step from there is, does it already exist? If so, do I just need to rebrand it? Do I just need to reskin something that already exists? And I think that concept alone is one of the hardest concepts for most people to really grasp, because they're so used to playing something in one world and in one system that I can't sort of wrap my head around just all I got to do is change a name. That's probably step one, and step 2 would be, all right, if I need something that I don't have, can I just make it up on the fly? Is it something that I really need to have an extra mechanic for? And that was part of our discussion as well, is right. Do you really need the mechanic?
Right.
And I think if it doesn't need an extra mechanic, well, then you just, you make it up. Is it a piece of loot that you need to add? Then create the loot and just give it a name, give it some numbers, and away you go. I mean, again, a lot of this stuff is things that you can do on the fly once you understand the system. I think the hard part for people to grasp is it's all smoke and mirrors from our end of the table. The players, as long as they got a smile on their face and they're cheering themselves on, they're having fun. And, who cares if you didn't get the numbers right? You're going to always have somebody that's going to do that, but, they're going to do that even if it's written into the rules. I played
some FFG, Fantasy Flight Games, because that's the crazy Genesis dice system too. But I played it in Star Wars, and Jamie Pearson was DMing, and it was amazing. It was a fantastic game. I had a ton of fun. I totally knew what was going on. I was super immersed, and I could see everything that we were doing in my mind's eye. And even though I didn't know the mechanics of the game, like you said, I'm just relating this back to smoke and mirrors. Jamie knew what was going on. And between me and him, it was just a narrative story that we were telling, and the mechanics were sort of down here. So my next question, or what I was going to say is, would you, if you're going to convert, would you start with the system or would you start with an adventure? Because I'm going to say adventure. And the reason I'm going to say that is I spent a lot of time putting things inside TTS that I'll probably never touch. Like, we've got the basic loot cards, we've got the shabby loot cards, all of the tokens for all of the, there's a lot of stuff there. I probably at some point won't ever touch some of the stuff that I put into the game. And had I just sat down and created my adventure and just built the stuff that I need, I even actually have a better example. For that adventure, I would have been done way sooner. Here's my other really horrible and atrocious example. Before OGL came out for 5th edition, I started playing online on Roll20. And inside of Roll20, they didn't have any of this stuff added in. So what I did was I found a PDF copy of the player's handbook, and I started cutting out all the images and then importing them into Roll20 and labeling them. And I spent literally like 1 month of my life, 3 hours a day after work, importing every table and every little piece of information from that player's handbook, all the spells, the whole 9 yards, into Roll20.
And now you'll never play D&D ever again, will you?
It's not even that. Then I found Fantasy Grounds, and Fantasy Grounds had it already done, and I just wanted to punch myself in my own balls, just as you know. So my thing would be, because I'm also not a big converter, is convert what you need for the start, and then maybe let it flesh out from there. What do you guys think? System or adventure conversion first? I'm adventure.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with that. One of the things that I've had this conversation at least 100 times when it comes to Rifts. Rifts is a kitchen sink kind of game. You can play anything. And one of the big things that a lot of players will come to me and go, I want to play this in Rifts. Okay, go ahead. Well, how do I do that? Just put it in there. And like you were saying, just translate it. Just put it in there, whatever flavor, whatever makes it work. Because you're going to waste so much time trying to get the power level right, and the fireball level, and the color, and the size, and the plus ones, and the dice rolls, and everything else, that at the end of the day is not going to matter. It's not going to matter whether you do an adventure conversion or a system conversion. My answer to that is just do whatever you need. You just answered your own question, I guess, Gary, is don't do all of it. Just do what you need. Whatever you need to be able to get that game, that session, or that particular storyline across, and be done with it, and go on to the next adventure, and keep pushing the characters into doing more, and being the badass heroes that they're supposed to be.
Yeah, I think you're going to get more out of conversion if you're a good DM that can convey the thematic setting of what you're trying to push. Like Dark Sun, for example, you're going to be talking about how the magic in Dark Sun basically sucks the life out of the earth, and how the ground blackens at your feet as you cast these spells. And there's a lot of stuff you can't do. You get your ass kicked for casting spells at Dark Sun and stuff like that. But then there's the things like the weapons and stuff that you need to bring in, because they have a lot of bone and stone, not a lot of metal. So just I think that when you're doing conversions, this is what would be like, I guess, my fifth or sixth question. Is it more important to get the mechanics down or the flavor of the game across?
The flavor of the game. Boil everything down to flavor, and just use the mechanics that you absolutely have to, there's no other way around it, that I have to make sure that D20 roll is 18 to 20 when this happens. You get to that point when you can't find any other way to be able to have the flavor do it. 99% of the time, you're just going to be able to translate it over. You only need 2 rules for one, like for defiling magic in Dark Sun. You only need 1 simple rule for that. You don't need a 13-page, dissertation on magic in the Dark Sun world just to be able to have that conversion document over for every single little thing you do. If your characters only have 6 spells amongst the entire party, right, low-level starting party, then only have 6 spells translated. The rest of them, make them up as you go. You don't have to go through the whole kit and caboodle of A through Z, every single spell converted over from the Dark Sun manual. Now, that being said, there is some help. There is some great, it's great for a GM who doesn't know how to do that, or doesn't even have the inclination to be able to go and take a look at a document that has A through Z, all the spells of the Dark Sun conversion document already done there for you, right? That's the lazy designer's way to do it, is to take somebody else's work or use somebody else's as a reference and play your game off of that. And every GM will tell you they'll steal notoriously from every source that they can find. If someone else has already created the wheel, why redo it? But at the end of the day, it all comes down to just the things that you absolutely need at the table to make the player's game a better game. That's really all that matters at the end of the day.
I think you kind of said it. If you're gonna convert and you're gonna start playing, your Star Wars or whatever. Let's say your Dark Sun, for example, and you kind of put it in a nutshell. The best way that I could explain it is, there's no point in converting the 9th level, 8th level, 7th level, 6th level spells when you're playing a first level game. Just convert what you need.
Not unless you're planning on handing them like an artifact that can cast a 9th level spell, and even then, just convert the artifact and whatever abilities it has. You don't need to convert the entire 9th level spell book of Dark Sun. It's just it's futile.
I'm gonna blight the person that picks up an artifact that can cast a 9th level spell at first level. They just explode into a pile of dust.
I've actually done that before in a game, and they actually picked it up and threw it away. And I handed them. It was an artifact in a D&D game, and they were like 2nd level. This is like just a couple of games into the game. They were all veteran gamers, so. I thought I'd throw a wild card in there. I literally had them stumble across an artifact, and they had it in their hands, and they thought, no, we get rid of all this junk. We just throw it into the chasm, into the corner, or, we'll throw it off into the corner. We won't look at it. And in the back of my head going, man, if you only knew what you really had in your hands. No one thought about detect magic or anything like that. It was totally they just totally blew it off. And finally, they're like 9th level. It's the epic ending, to a big long campaign, 2 years worth of playing or whatever. And then somebody realized going, hey, that sounds familiar. Why does that sound familiar? And still to this day, I haven't told them, and I hope they're not listening, but they have no idea that they had the artifact that they needed to save the world right in their own hands. They ended up blowing up the planet, just ruining the game. But I gave it to them in the beginning, and they didn't think about it at that time because they were too busy all worrying about, how do we level up? Where are we going to get to this adventure? Rescue the princess, that kind of thing. So it's a really cool. It's a cool little one I'll throw out there that everyone can steal. Give your players the artifact at first level and see if they know what to do with it. Most first level players won't even know that it's an artifact. They'll just think it's just some big broken spear, or broken sword or whatever you want to call it, amulet, magic trinket, magic rock, whatever. And it could be, a world-ending, god-ending, Tarrasque-killing kind of artifact. And they're just, screw it. And they'll throw it over their shoulder and throw it back into the pond.
Frank, where is the Middle Kingdom's Guide for Conversion? Where can we find that?
Yeah, we're going to have to come up with that one. I think if anybody's going to publish it, I want to be the first.
Yeah, good luck with that one, Frank.
Yeah, it's going to be, it's probably 1 page long, and I just told you what it is. So
I'm just
whoever's paying to transcribe the show, then just copy and paste.
I'm surprised that there isn't like an Ezra Hardin Guide to Conversion in and amongst the other thing that you got on the go there, your other book.
You know what? I'll get around to writing that in about 100 years from now, because it's tough to. I mean, you can't convert everything. You can't translate everything because you only translate what you need, and if I don't need it, I'm not going to even bother looking at it because there's so much other stuff to do.
I just feel like I need to crack the whip a little more. I need more material.
But I think the idea of conversion is a tough one because most people, when you say conversion, they want to have a formula that they can just plug in. I remember when 5th edition D&D came out and everybody was talking about, well, how do I convert my 3.5 to 5th edition? And people had spreadsheets to say, this is, you plug these numbers in here and out comes this number. And I think, and that always happens. And I don't think you can do that. I think that you're talking about different things. It goes back to that idea that it's not about the system. It's about the flavor. It's about what story do I want to tell tonight? And can I do it with what's already there? If I can't, then I got to start thinking about either adding something in or just changing some names.
That's the essence of ICRPG, though. Keeping it simple. Stripping away all of the weight, all of the systemic stuff that keeps you, that takes a 6-minute battle to be played out by 4.5 hours of table time. Getting rid of all of that stuff, keeping it simple and just boiling it down to the flavor, I think is ICRPG. I mean, that's what Hankerin has talked about in his YouTube videos. That's what, he's talked about in his design pages, in his GM tactic encounter tables, and all the other stuff that he's put into the core rules. All of that stuff boils it down to really simplistic 1 page, a couple of bullet points and a paragraph of some fiction thrown in there for some keys for the GM to go with and run with it. That is the whole key to the system. And you can't take, in my example, that's one of the things that I learned after talking to it with Frank. I can't take a system that's so complex like Shadowrun and do a raw conversion because I'll end up with 100 rules that really at the end of the day, you don't need them. Just go with the flavor, translate it over, make it work with the minimum of what you need to be able to make it feel the same way. So if they play a mage in Shadowrun, that same mage in ICRPG will have the same feel. Maybe mechanically and the dice rolling or whatever won't be identical, but it'll be close enough to where the player still feels the same threat, the same power, the same abilities, the same versatility, whatever you want the players to be able to feel. That's getting down to the core of ICRPG. That's what makes it a great game.
Yeah, I think if you're going to try and convert your 9th level mage from 5th edition Shadowrun into ICRPG, you might as well just keep walking, because that's really not what not what it's intended for. I think you're either looking at, okay, I'm going to create this same character, and I'm going to give him ICRPG stats, and he's basically, this is a new character, and these are the items that he used to have, so now he has those items, and maybe that's the loot that brings him up to that same power level. But you're not going to be able to plug in numbers and say, well, he's got this for strength over here, and well, he used to have these stats over there, and how do I move one to the next? And you're never going to be moving.
So it was at this point in Frank's conversation that Skype decided to take a dump. So we're going to pick it right up where Frank realizes that he can no longer remember what he was just talking about.
I don't remember what I was saying.
Okay, that's cool. I'm going to leave that in because that's even funnier.
Just if I was just rambling at some point.
Yeah, you can't take a high-level character, convert him over, regardless of what system it is, convert him over into ICRPG and continue playing that character and expect to have the same stat for stat, data for data, statistic for statistic, an A equals B kind of a systemic conversion, because it's not going to happen. You just take the essence of your character, the essence of the story background, whatever major items or things he has to have, and then bring him over with you, make your character, write him up, and just keep playing him. Just keep playing him the way you did. The thing that I think a lot of you bring up a very good point. You brought a thought to my mind that I've been thinking about a little bit. I've had some conversations, I think, with you, Frank, about it. Munchkinism. You have these guys that are all worried about a +1, -1, plus to hit, minus to hit, bonus damage, multiple effects, multiple attacks, penalties to hit, long shot, extreme range, sniper shots to the head with, through the eyelash kind of thing. I think those guys are the ones that are going to have the hardest time converting character, converting games, and getting through the thought process of, I'm no longer playing that game where I can do that way into ICRPG, because ICRPG is, because it's rules light and because it's so focused on storyline and the PCs and the players, that I think there's a lack of balance there between the two. Not just balance in the system, but I think there's balance in the lack of balance in the way it's played. You can play a burned out 9th level mage in Shadowrun, and you can play the same 9th level burned out mage in ICRPG, but in ICRPG there's no levels. The spells are going to be similar. You're still going to be able to cast magic, and combat's still going to run. You're still going to run out of ammo. You're still going to go shooting for cover, but you're not going to have to worry about all those penalties to act, multiple penalty reactions, drain, force elements, and all that other stuff in it. And that's kind of the point. That's kind of the point of ICRPG, is to be able to do that without having all that systemic weight behind you to slow you down and keep you from doing it. It's a valid point. It's a valid discussion. And I know we've had this discussion before.
I think we lost Frank. He's probably gone to get some more quarters to pay for his internet. The last thing we're going to talk about, Victor, is balance. It says right here, section F, balance. You were just talking about it. It says balance, ? LOL. I just want to say F your balance. Life isn't balanced.
Yeah. What's one of the things that Hankeron's preached about, right? That he's talked about on the show the last time we had him on. And one of the things he says a lot in his YouTubes, he's like, screw balance. If they're gonna decide to take on that epic beholder or that, that giant dragon, okay, well, hit them with it. They're taking their characters' lives in their hands and they're making those decisions. Then go with it. It's okay. And if they die and you get a TPK, a total party kill, so be it. And hand them new character sheets and get started with it.
I agree.
I think too many people worry about balance, and the reason they do that is because unfortunately, it comes from the vocabulary of Dungeons and Dragons for the last 3 or 4 iterations. There has been everything from party balance, combat rating balance, experience balance, and all that other stuff. And I think players at the table for role-playing games are too concerned about making it fair for everybody. Because like you said in the beginning, life's not fair. Why should role-playing games be any different? There are people that'll give you a different argument for it, but it's...
Yeah, I'm not saying throw a dragon at your first level players, but if your first level players are like, we want to go kill a dragon, don't stop them. All right, folks. I'm sorry we got to pull the plug in this deal, or we'd be here all night. Victor, take us out with the song and a dance. Maybe you put your leather chaps on, get your bullwhip out, your hot oil, maybe a massage. No?
Let me get the whip out. Here we go. Here comes the song and dance. Ladies and gentlemen, you can reach us at murderhoboshow@gmail.com or in the subject line if you put ICRPG. You can also get us on Twitter if you can keep it under 280 characters, because that's right. Twitter's moved up and they've doubled the amount of characters you can post. So once again, you can reach us on Twitter at Murder Hobo Show, or of course over at the Google Plus page, Murder Hobo Show, under the Nerds International banner. You can reach out to myself directly on the Google Plus Savage Rifts page. You're always going to find me there. You guys know me. You guys can talk to me over on the Google Plus page for ICRPG as well. Always very active and alive. So make sure you guys drop us a note and let us know what you think.
Also, I would like to mention the Nerds International Virtual Convention, March 10th to 11th, 2018. You can find them at nerdsinternationalvirtualcon.wordpress.com. There's sign-ups for numerous games. If you want to play with industry all-stars, such as Victor Diaz, Eric Lamoureux, myself, because I am an all-star in bed, you can go to this website and sign up. Don't burst my bubble, Frank. I'm not sure what they're going to be running, but you're going to find a multitude of different games, different systems, different genres, different settings. I personally will be doing my Gartar setting. Basically, that's like the one I'm doing this time is going to be sort of like a Western flavor to it. Deserts, death, destructions, a lot of drinking beers, a lot of hot ladies, and turmoil at the old town of Bastardo. Frank, what about you? What do you got?
I just want to remind everybody to drop us a line. Let us know what topics you would like us to cover in the future episodes. And as always, you can find my tabletop and virtual tabletop maps, 2.5D modular tiles, and all kinds of other gaming stuff at my Patreon, which is located at patreon.com/FrankT. And I just recently changed it a little bit. If I hit my goal of $250 per creation, I'm going to go ahead and start adding in some ICRPG adventures to go along with Free Map Friday.
So it's going to be like you're making modules?
Yeah, you could say that. They're probably going to be closer to one sheets, but I think, in our current gaming modes, that's about a module. I've been experimenting with some of the I can't remember what he calls them, but he's got a bunch of pages of just, here's some different setups for encounters, and I think I'm going to start experimenting with those different ideas for maps.
Encounter archetypes.
There we go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where you have a room setup or a scenario setup where you've got a chasm to cross and goblins on the other side raining arrows down on you, and you can't really do anything to them if you're melee because you got to go all the way around. Different things like that, different problems you can throw at your characters. I will say one thing that Zovia was telling me some time ago that I thought was like world-renowned advice. A lot of times, and especially in today's online environment where you're online playing role-playing games with other people, it's really hard to find maps that are in tune with your scenario or what you're trying to accomplish. Maybe you're running a Western setting and you need a saloon or something like that. Try finding a Western saloon map. Most stuff is fantasy, but my advice is make the module based on the map that you already have instead of trying to find a map for the module you already have. I don't even know if I said that right, but you get the gist of what I'm saying.
Absolutely. Work your adventure around what you have. Unless, of course, you're using modular terrain, and then you don't have to worry about it as much.
All right. That's it, everybody. We're done. Everybody say goodbye. Bye.
Good night.
I'm going to miss you guys. I think Victor already fell asleep. The Murder Hobo Show is not affiliated with or endorsed by any companies mentioned on this show. Any of the products mentioned on our show or appear on our website are the property and copyright of their respected owners. All items are used under fair use and educational and review purposes. All other items are the intellectual property of the Murder Hobo Show, copyright 2017, all rights reserved.